Let's talk about one of the toughest things any leader has to do: guide a team through a big organizational change. It's a moment where even the best managers can totally miss the mark. But it really doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so let's just dive right in, because the real heart of the problem is right here. As a leader, you've had months to get your head around this. You've been in the meetings, you've seen the plans, you've processed it. You're standing at the finish line, ready for what's next. But your team? For them, the starting gun just went off, and they've been dropped right into shock. So here's how we're going to break this all down. We're going to look at those two different journeys, map out the emotional ride everyone's on, figure out why people get stuck, and then we'll get into a step-by-step playbook for coaching them through it. Right? So this difference in timing, this empathy gap, this is where all that frustration and what we call resistance comes from. But honestly, it's almost never about people being defiant. It's about how our brains are wired. See, the thing you have to get is that when your team hears about a big change, their brain isn't sitting there analyzing the business logic. No way. It's asking a much, much older question. Am I safe or am I in danger? And that split-second decision pretty much sets the stage for everything that comes after. So, is there a way to map out this reaction? To predict this journey through uncertainty? Well, yeah, there is. Turns out there's a really solid model that shows us exactly what to expect. And here it is. This is the famous Kubler-Ross change curve, but applied to the workplace. It shows this totally predictable path we all go on. You start with shock, maybe some denial, then you dip down into frustration. But eventually, you start to climb out through exploration, and hopefully, you land in integration at that new normal. Your team is on this path. And you were too, probably months ago. And this visualizes the leader's blind spot perfectly. You're way up there at the end of the curve, feeling good about integration, ready to go. Meanwhile, your team is just hitting the brakes back at shock, or maybe they're sliding down into frustration. You're ready to sprint, and they're just realizing the race has started. So, why does this happen? Why do some people seem to get stuck down in that trough of frustration for way longer than others? What is it that's holding them there? Well, it all comes down to some really basic psychological needs. Yeah, how fast someone moves through this curve, it's not about how good they are at their job or their personality type. It's all about whether or not their fundamental psychological needs are being met. Now, there are a few things that can slow people down, like just being overloaded with new information or feeling like their identity at work is at risk. But today, we're going to zero in on two of the most powerful things you can influence as a leader. These things called SCARF threats and this idea of mattering. Okay, SCARF. It's a fantastic model from neuroscience. It's an acronym for 5 things our brains are constantly scanning our social environment for. Status, am I important here? Certainty, can I predict what's going to happen? Autonomy, do I have any control? Relatedness, do I belong here? And fairness, is this a level playing field? If a change threatens any one of these, a threat alarm goes off in the brain, and moving forward becomes really, really hard. But, it's not just about avoiding threats. People have a deeper need. We all need to feel like we matter. And this isn't some fluffy, nice-to-have idea. It's core to our motivation. It breaks down into 2 simple parts: feeling valued, that people see and appreciate me, and adding value, that my work actually contributes something meaningful. And this brings us to a really crucial distinction. Using that SCARF model helps keep people's threat response in check. It keeps them regulated. That's super important. But just being calm isn't the same as being committed. You only get that real passionate investment when people feel like they actually matter to the future you're all trying to build. Okay, so theory's great, but how do you actually do this? How do you close that empathy gap, quiet down those SCARF threats, and show people they matter? Simple. You've got to meet them where they are on the curve. You have to tailor your entire approach. I want you to think of this chart as your leadership playbook. Just look down the first column. Depending on where your team is, reaction, resistance, and so on, their psychological needs are completely different. And so your role as a leader has to change to match. Early on, you're just providing info and listening. When frustration hits, your job is to listen and validate their feelings. Later, it's about giving support and finally empowering them. And to bring that playbook to life, you need to stop thinking about one big announcement and start thinking about having 4 very distinct conversations. First, you stabilize everyone with clear information. Then, you help them make sense of it all. Then, and this is so important, you have one-on-one talks to show each person why they matter. And finally, you just keep reinforcing and encouraging them along the way. Now, I know what you might be thinking. All this listening, validating, having multiple conversations, it feels slow. It feels like you're taking your foot off the gas. But I promise you, it is the only way to build the kind of momentum that actually lasts.
Please, burn this into your brain. Calm is not commitment. A quiet team isn't necessarily a bought-in team. They might have just checked out. Sometimes, silence is the loudest sign of disengagement. Real commitment is loud, it's active, it's engaged. And that gets us to the absolute core of everything we've talked about. When people feel, deep in their bones, that they are necessary for this new future to succeed, they don't resist change. Why would they? They help create it. And that is the great paradox of leading change, isn't it? If you want to get to that new normal faster, you have to start by going slow. You have to anchor your people in what isn't changing, their worth, their identity, their importance to the team. You stabilize their foundations so their brains can handle building something new. That is how you go slow to go fast. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a challenge. Forget the big, sweeping change strategy for just a second. What is one single conversation you can have this week to make one person on your team feel completely and totally necessary to whatever comes next? Because that's where change really begins.